All right, guys, so this is going to be the third video that is going to be for the painting that we are working with as far as the brushstroke technique, where you actually see the brushstrokes. We are not mixing, we are not blending, we are not transitioning, other than maybe getting variations of the tones for the dark, mid, and light areas. But as far as the smoothness of the transition, we are not going for that effect. We are actually going for the actual brushstroke. So just in case, if you didn't catch that in the other videos, that's basically what this technique is based about, okay? So at this point, the next step, we are gonna get the hair. However, even before the hair, I do wanna think about when it comes to the actual background first. So what I'm gonna do on mine at this point is I'm gonna start concentrating on where more or less the background is. If I want to, with a pencil, because I originally, when I was doing the outline, I did not draw the outline of my hair. All I did was concentrate like on the face and so forth. I did very, very little here. Like if I get really, really close, you can kind of see, I'd have to kind of go because it's very, very light. So you can kind of see a few little lines right here that I did of like the curls and so forth, but I kept them light on purpose just for the fact being that I don't want the pencil to come through the paint at the end, okay? So at this point, I am going to kind of, not necessarily these areas because these areas I already have the lines, but I did not concentrate here where the hair meets with the background. Now, on my reference, if I show you guys the actual picture to this, you don't see a definite line in between the background versus the hair. If you choose that you want it to be a completely different color, kind of like, and if I give you an example of the first reference that we had where it was the baby picture, because she has like a deep blue background over here, and then she's has more pinks on her face. So because of that high contrast, if you wanted something like that, you could do something like that where you were to pick the contrasting color. Now, because over here I've got blues, if I wanted to do a light colored black background, like something with pinks or oranges or things like that, then I would create a high contrast. Like I said, I'm trying to keep mine with the same colors as my actual reference picture, which are more in the blue and purple tones. So I'm going to be sticking to more of a purplish colored background. And then the hair is going to be more of the dark blue. So they'll have some of each other of the colors in it. However, again, I'm keeping mine more monochromatic. If you guys want yours with more color and variety and contrast, then you guys can choose and opt to do that, okay? So at this point, all I'm going to do is kind of reference where my hair on my actual picture has more or less the definition. Like I said, my hair is very, I mean, you guys have seen me wear it different every single day. I sometimes have my hair loose. I sometimes have my hair picked up in a ponytail, sometimes back. In this case, this picture does have my hair in a loose format. So I'm just gonna kind of outline more or less. It usually gets a lot smaller. My hair becomes more compact up here on the top. I don't have a lot of volume there. The volume tends to be on the bottom of my hair, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing over here. And I am taking a look at my picture and I'm trying to see like where I can kind of pick up where the actual color starts to change. So I noticed that over here, it's like a different type of blue versus this, which tends to tell me when I'm looking at a picture like that, that's usually like where the color starts to change. Now, on the picture itself, my hair actually comes somewhere like here. It actually falls on top of this dark shadow that I placed here. However, I'm gonna go ahead and I painted a little bit, excuse me, beyond the actual hairline, just for the fact being that, when I paint on top of it, it's going to get covered either way. And I would rather, like I did with the other one, this part over here, where I ended up putting a little bit of color, a little bit below where this line is going to be. So I know for a fact that it's going to get covered up. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to start with the paint. Now I do need to mix a little bit. So you're going to have to bear with me. If you already mixed your paint, just wait a little bit for me. But other than that, I do have to mix because I know I'm going to want some purples. So I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to grab the blue and I'm going to go ahead and put this blue over here because I know this is where I had mixed my purple originally. So I'm going to try to grab what I think I would need. Before I touch the red, I am going to clean it with my napkin. So I'll just remove that off. And then I'll grab some of the red and I'll go ahead and put some. I know I'm going to need more than that, so I might as well grab some more right now and just place it here. mix first, and then if we see that we need more, which I know just looking at it, I'm gonna need more red tone, but I do want some variety. Like I don't want it to be all the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix this first. And then once I get this darker purple, I'll grab more of the red and I'm gonna mix it, but over here on this side. So that way I kind of have a little bit of variety of both. So I'm gonna scoot this over as much as I can, grab a little bit and just place it here. Remember, it's best to try to remove as much as you can before you clean your brush. And then clean it as much as you can. If it's not coming off completely, like you can kind of see some of the red, this is where you should wash a little bit into the water. You can see how I already cleaned that off, and then I'm just gonna dry it with the brush. And the reason why I do that first is because if I were to have just put my brush into the water automatically, then you're gonna get that water all dirty right away. So this is just a way to help protect your water as well and not have to wash it and clean it every single time, like run and go get more clean water and so forth, okay? So I'm gonna grab a little bit more of the red and I'm just gonna go ahead and probably maybe about this much should be okay. And then I'm gonna just mix this just to kind of get a different type of purple, and it's not the same purple. It does have more red in it, so of course it's not gonna look the same. If you're happy with the tone, great, leave it. If you're not, then if you want it like a lighter version of the purple, what do I add to it to make it a tint? Does anybody remember? I'm gonna drag some of this purple into it. If I wanna make a tint of a color, not a shade, but a tint, what is it that I'm supposed to add? Anybody remember? White. So white is to lighten it up. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of that over here. Just mix it in slowly so you're happy with the color that you get. It's better to put a little bit at a time rather than to mix too much and you make it too light and then have to go back with the dark color. So it's better just to mix it slowly. And that should be good there. Okay, so now that I have that, I want to double check. I want to make sure that my brush is clean first for the first part of it, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and start with not actually purple, but I'm actually going to start with a little bit of a blue layer first, and then I'll put the purple on top of that. So I'm going to start off with just the regular blue. Remember, if you're using other colors, it's okay, but I'm just starting off with blue just to kind of put a few brush strokes, and I'm concentrating on the background. Remember to go in different directions and so forth. Don't keep the brush always the same stroke. Then I'll go back in my purple and I'll go ahead and I'm going to add some of the purples over here just to kind of get those brush strokes visible. Get some more. I want to go ahead and put some of this just to remove it from my brush, and then I'll go back into the blue. So I cleaned my brush, getting more blue, and then I'll just go ahead and just whatever I have with the blue apply. Different brush strokes, guys. If you wanted to, like I said, apply with the bigger, thicker brush just to get a different brush stroke in general, like it's a lot larger, you can do that as well. You can kind of see that by leaving the white of the paper, I kind of more or less get an already more or less where my hair is going to be placed. So that's kind of a good visual if I feel like, oh, you know what, that's not enough hair, which technically I do have, like it does look a little bit more full over here on the bottom. That's okay, as long as I have it in the line a little bit, then when I go back on top, the paint will go on top with no problem, okay? So right now I'm just concentrating on making sure that wherever that is gonna go, that placement of the hair, that it's a little bit inside of that, okay? So I'm gonna clean my brush because I'm actually gonna put a little bit of the light purple. So now that I have that finished, I can take some of the light purple, and again, this is for the background. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna just place a few brush strokes where I feel it needs it. So I'm gonna put some here, because I do want more purple. I don't really want too much of that blue showing at the very end, because my background, I know I want more of a purple tone. And what I'm gonna use the blue is more for the hair, because my hair is gonna be the dark blues. I'm not gonna really place purple in my hair. So this is why I need to make sure I do go back, I get some of the purple, and I put it on top of this blue acrylic that's over here. If it's still very wet, like if the blue is very wet, which I really only have it on this side, then I want to make sure that I give it a little bit of time to dry. So I'm going to come back over here, and where my blue is, I'm going to start placing some of that deep dark purple on top of it. So I know that I'm going to have the different brush strokes. Remember to go in different directions. So if I feel like, man, I've been going up and down or side to side this way too much, then take the brush stroke up. Just take it to a different angle. I'm gonna put some here. The most important, like I said, is just so that way you actually see if a brush stroke, if it looks too similar, like right there, how it looks too much of the same, let it dry a little bit, get maybe some of the light purple, put a stroke on top, just so that way at least you see the variation between the two colors. I know I need some light purple here, but it's just got way too much paint, so I gotta wait for it to dry a little bit. Another type of contrast that you might want to do between the whole thing, I mean, you could technically, if you want to do like one solid color for the background, you don't want it to be brush stroke. That's another thing. So if you're doing it and you're not liking the way it looks, I do. But if you don't, let's say you do it on yours and you're like, it's too much texture, then you can always get that same color and just make it a solid color, just making sure that you're not making it completely flat where you see a few strokes, but they can be elongated long strokes. That way you have that's another type of contrast where you have different patterns for the background versus the actual image itself. That's just another form of contrast, but I'm gonna keep mine like that. Like I said, looks funny right now because it looks like she has like white hair, like an old lady or something, but I will be putting some blue and so forth in that. So at this point, the hair, I am going to do it in a different stroke, which is why I decided to leave the same kind of brush stroke with the outside, because where the contrast is going to be is this versus the hair strokes. Okay, so I am going to clean my brush because I do have a lot of purple on it. So let me clean it, put it in the water, and then just clean it off one more time with the paper towel. So now for my hair, I'm going to add a little bit more movement to the hair. Can you guys decide to do this the same exact pattern? Yes. So if you want to keep it with the same, type of shortness of the strokes, go for it. And then if you don't like it, you can always be on top of it once it's dry. So these are a couple of options for you. Like I said, I know I want to stick more to the blues. I'm actually going to add, I think I'm going to do one more mixture where I'm actually going to put a little bit of the black as well. So I'm going to mix. So let me put black just a little bit. And I'm going to take some of the blue and I'm going to mix it to the black so I can get a darker blue. This again would be like a shade. And I actually want a little bit more blue into that. So let me clean my brush. Just remove as much as I can before I get some of that blue. There we go. Just because I know I want a little bit of variety of color. Okay, so now that I have my colors there, let me clean my brush because how I went into the black, it's going to be heavily dirty. We know that. So let me clean it one more time. Okay, just because I am going to start with the blue first. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to get just the blue, and at this point, like I said, I am going to completely change the stroke. I'm not going to keep it with a little brush stroke. I actually want it to look like my curly hair. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to first kind of wiggle it as I go. So I'm just getting like long brush strokes. This is gonna be the under for me. You guys, if you have straight hair, probably not gonna wanna do this, and that's okay. But I'm just trying to get some movement first for the bottom. And then when I start doing the paint with the black on top is where you'll see more of the brush stroke. I'm gonna put blue here, just getting some curly texture on the bottom. You guys probably don't have curly texture, and that's fine. Keep it straight. You can always do long, like long movements for straight hair as well, okay? So I know this has to get covered up a little bit because my hair does this. And my long part comes this. This is my long bang. So I'm not really thinking too much about it. I'm just trying to make sure that I see the movement. This part I know I want more blue because my hair does more like this. Same thing for this. If some of the white comes through, that's okay for me. It'll help with my... Now on the actual picture itself, I do have a strong contour, which I'm gonna first, before I do the texture, I'm actually gonna try to get my contour. So I'm trying to keep this as a clean line for me. So it does this. And then I have a little dip right there. So this I'm gonna keep as a clean contour, which means that my contour, I'm trying my best to get it to the shape that I have on the picture, just because I don't want texture in between there. I will be putting a little bit of black outlining on here, just a little bit, that will help kind of enhance some of that movement. But it doesn't have to be perfect, because right now I'm just trying to get the shape of the hair. As long as I kind of wiggle it, you know, it's fine, because I'm gonna go back on top of it with that darker blue. This is just a base coat. This is not really necessarily a lot of detail just yet. And then I do have to bring some of this with texture, because I do have texture. So I'm just gonna bring this to kind of mix as if it were like shadow work into my neck. So if I pick it up, you can see that. I'm just trying to get the colors to blend, okay? So now this is just the base coat. This is not the final. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take off the paint again so I can get the actual dark colors and tones. I am going to wash the brush because I'm going to switch brushes. So I'm going to clean that up. If you're gonna use the same brush, that's fine, stick to the same brush. But me, because remember when I was doing some of the detail stuff with the black, when I was doing the detail work in the face, I had switched to, I believe it was this one that I used, and it's a thinner brush. So if you guys want to use a thinner brush, if you want to stick to the same brush, go for it. And actually, I take that back. I believe this one. I wasn't using a detailed brush. I was using a square brush. It was just a smaller brush, and that was so that way I can concentrate on keeping the strokes with some type of flat brush while being able to use the tip of it in this direction when I'm making thin lines, okay? So what I'm gonna end up doing, I'm gonna switch this a little bit so you can actually see what I'm doing here with the colors, because I'm not using those light colors anymore. So at this point, what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm going to grab this color that's the dark blue that has black in it, and I'm going to start at this point trying to make a few little more smaller movements, not so long, because like I said, this was just to be able to put color on the back of it and not take up so much time. So now that I have this, I'm gonna go ahead and make some smaller strokes just to kind of get more of a brush movement. Now, this is because I have curly hair. If you have straight hair, you can do the same thing, but going in long strokes, okay? So I'm just trying to get some movement in here. So I'm just gonna go with small little strokes now. I do have more of a texture when it comes to right here closer to the face. And now that I'm putting the dark colors, you can kind of see where now it's going to start to look balanced automatically because of what I have outlined here in the middle part of the face. So where I have the most definition would be the curl that's like right here, right up against the face here. On my reference picture, I have another one that kind of does this. This is probably like the only parts that I see as far as the most detail. Let me lift that so you can see without the glare. So that's about as much detail. The rest is going to look more loose like these over here. So I'm just going to come in. I'm going to try to hit the areas that have the white in it, especially to kind of remove that white because I don't want a lot of white showing. If I want to go back with the same movements, but instead of with the black that I added the blue to, I can still just use regular blue to kind of cover it. Like I feel if it's too much black, then I can go ahead and. But the same technique that I'm doing with these curls, if you have straight hair, you can do with the straight. If you don't like that texture and you'd rather stick to the same using the dark, medium, light, but with a brush stroke, you can do that as well. So it's just whatever you guys feel looks better. Here I do have a few brush strokes in black that I'm going to incorporate into the skin because I have a deep shadow that's like right here. Like if I lift it, there's a deep shadow right here on the neck. So I am going to incorporate a little bit more of that black, but with a brush stroke, not with the movement of the curly hair. So I'm going to get that in there, and then this is all curly hair. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of that in there. I still have to put it on the opposite side as well. I did run out of blue, and since I'm not going to use a lot of the regular blue, it's okay if my paint mixes. So it's all right, and just to kind of save time, I'm just getting that same deep blue over here with the black. So I'm going to bring this here. I do have to take my time right here. That's right next to my face. So this is where I'm going to slow down just to make sure that I get, this is the part that's the most detailed is the part that's here and the part that's right here next to my, right next to my contour of the, and that's usually the part that you do have to make sure you take your time when you do it. So I'm just going to work on getting some of these little curl tones, small little strokes, just to kind of get brush detail. For those of you guys that ever took me in drawing class, if you guys did the portrait when I was talking about how to draw hair and so forth, when I told you guys that it's individual strands, it's the same thing with paint. Even if I was trying to draw this with more of a realistic approach, it would be painting first the bottom coat, the bottom layer of the hair, the color, whatever that is. And then from there, you just go on top of it strand by strand, except if I was trying to do this in a realistic version, it would not be this thick. I would actually use a very fine detailed brush and I would go back strand by strand by strand by strand. And people are like, ma'am, you're crazy. You would paint it strand by strand. And I'm like, if you've ever seen some of those artists that post the videos of them doing hyper realism, whenever you see them paint hair, that's how they do it. They are painting it strand by strand. So yes, this is just the approach, and even in drawing, it's the same technique that we tend to do when we're trying to apply realism to an actual piece. I know in my background for mine, when it comes to the actual reference itself, I'm going to add some blue here, but for the reference, if I'm looking at it, it actually does, the hair kind of fades into the background, and I kind of like that. It almost looks like it's fading into the purple, so I don't want to lose that. I can add a few strokes, but I do want to make it look like it's disappearing on mine just because that's the way my reference looks. So I'm not really going to define my hair. I'm just going to put a few strands as if it were fading away to the back. And you can't really see the edge of my hair because that's the way it does look on my reference picture that I'm looking at. Okay, so that's another option. For those of you guys that want to just kind of disappear it in the back, then do a dark background, kind of like what I did. And then it's almost like if you look at it, kind of transitioned in a way because you've got this lighter blue into this darker blue because I put it on top of the purple. So automatically it is getting darker towards the back end. So that's a way to kind of get that effect like it's fading away, okay? I'm not gonna put a lot of detail here. I think I do need to change this part just a little bit because if I'm looking at my reference, it doesn't follow it exactly. And if yours doesn't follow it exactly, it's okay. Because like I said, we're just playing with this particular style, this technique. And you know, some of you guys might like it, some of you guys might not, and that's okay. It's really whatever you guys like. And I have kind of like these weird curls in my reference. So they kind of come like this and they kind of do some weird stuff. So I'm just gonna put a few. I'm not gonna go crazy with it because like I said, we're not doing this super realistic. It's just to kind of get the look of more of a brush stroke effect. I'm gonna put some blue here because I don't like the white coming through. So you can kind of go back with a few brush strokes if you want to try to match the same colors last time. Like technically I would put light blue there, but it's not a big deal for me. I can just kind of add a little bit of this color here or there in some of the strokes, like if it were shadow work, and it works for me. If it doesn't for you, go back and redo that light color and you can apply the light. But since I had shadows like this where I kind of went here with the dark, I can do the same thing for me over here. And for me, it works. So for today, guys, the only thing you really have to concentrate on, like I said, is getting the background and the hair. Play with it. If you already did it and you're not happy with the results because you're like, no, I don't like that effect. I don't like those brush strokes. I tried what she did, but because I have straight hair, it doesn't look the same. Like that sort of thing. And you guys want to end up repainting over once it dries, let it dry completely. Give it a few, minutes. So you're probably gonna have to wait like a good 15, 20 minutes. Put a fan on it or something, or if you want to just take your paper and kind of go like this up and down, just so that way it dries faster, you can do that. And then once you do that, then you can go ahead and paint on top of it once it's dry and try putting some of that other effect on it. I think if I were to add anything else, I wouldn't actually mind trying to add a little bit of the purple as strokes. So you know how I did the black strokes? I would actually get that dark purple and I'd probably like kind of bring a few of the brush strokes, kind of doing the same thing what I did with the black, but adding some of those purple in between just to kind of get more texture in the hair, just because I know my hair is so curly that I've got like a lot of layering in there. And then plus I got my white hairs. Maybe I should add some white just because I like now I have, maybe not in the picture, but now I've got so much gray hair. It's so funny that like, because of the pandemic and with the worrying and all that stuff, I mean, I just went from being, having my brown brunette hair from one year to the next, and I just started getting like a bunch of grays. So I don't know, I might decide to go back, but I wouldn't mind adding some of this. Like for me, that adds more texture. So I kind of like the purple. So if you guys want to do multiple colors and not just two, you can add more colors. I just kind of like that it has some of the background color in it. It helps transition, like I said, for me. The more texture, the better. Especially since I have so much texture on the face, I just feel that the more strokes that you incorporate will automatically look good. So just go back and forth, guys, until you're happy with it, and you should be okay. But that's all that we're really gonna do for today was just the background and the hair. If you do get like areas where like, no, there's no, like I accidentally put too much of the color, like I said, let it dry, or right before it dries, just kind of put one of the other colors in there and you can kind of go back and add that texture if you need it. Okay, guys? So I'm gonna go ahead and end the video there. That way I can go ahead and post that up, but that's really what you're gonna be working on for today.